This is going to be a special episode of Photo Breakdown. Photo Breakdown is a podcast where I talk with a photographer sharing the story of a specific photograph, technique, or business win. I'm your host, Scott Wyden Kivowitz, and this is the Photo Breakdown. Let's break it down. I don't have a guest today. This is just me, your host, Scott Wyden Kivowitz, and I am talking about a photo that is from a series that I did years ago on my personal blog at scottwyden.com. And this photo is actually part of a series that I did for a client at the time. Now, this client went on to being one of my instructors. Here's what I mean. So years ago, when I was dating my now wife, before we were married, I was asked by my now father-in-law to photograph some karate stuff that was going on, some events and some tests and things like that. And over time, I got to know everybody in the karate school, the instructors, and they kept asking me, when am I going to join? When am I going to join? Now, at the time, I mentally was not ready for joining karate. Now, if you know me, if you've followed me over the years, you know that I am currently a purple belt at a karate school here in New Jersey. And it's a very traditional martial arts. It's a Goju-Ryu style school. Very traditional. It's not Taekwondo. It's not MMA. It's not BJJ. It's extremely, extremely traditional. And really, everything that we do goes back to the beginnings of Goju-Ryu in Japan, and even trace back to China, right? So if you ever watch Karate Kid and you are aware of Miyagi, the school that I'm a student at is based on the style that an actual person named Miyagi, started teaching many, many, many years ago. So Mr. Miyagi is actually based on a real karate master named Miyagi. Okay, Chojun Miyagi to be exact. Before we dive in, this episode is sponsored by my lead generation course for photographers called More Leads, More Clients. Yes, if you would like to increase the leads you're generating on your photography site, you can use the strategies I teach in my course. Access it at scottwyden.com/leads. Here's a story. The photo that we're talking about right now is two people. These are two instructors of mine, and at the time they were not my instructors, as I just said, but it's a photo of one instructor, one of the guys is on the right side, in a sort of what's called kamae stance. He's in a ready stance for a fight, and the guy on the left is in the air doing a flying sidekick. Okay, so here is what is going on. I did all these photo sessions. I photographed tests, as I mentioned. I photographed some other special events. And then the patriarch of the school, who sadly this past year during the pandemic, not from the virus, but the patriarch of the school who started our school in the 70s, passed away. But years ago, he asked me to eventually photograph all the photos for the second book he was writing. So he became a paid client of mine. He hired me to photograph hundreds and hundreds of photos. I think there was 20,000 photos in the end that we then had to cull through and pick the 700 out of for the various pages of his book. And so we did that. And this photo is actually one of those photos that wound up being in the book. And of course, it's talking about the flying sidekick and how to do it and things like that. But here's the interesting thing. So two people did this flying sidekick in photos. The person you see in this photo, he's a Renchi, is his rank. Okay, so we actually call him by Renchi, and his last name. And Shion is actually on the right, and he's the one who owns our school now. And also Shion is another rank, and Shion is actually right above Renchi. So with that said, another instructor who goes by the rank of Kiyoshi, he was doing it, and he was unhappy with his stance. Now, I say stance, but he's actually in the air, so he's not standing. So he was unhappy with how he looked, the stance, in the air for his flying sidekick. So we didn't that did not get used in the book. I mean, of course, I've showed it to people. It's fantastic. If you don't know the intricacies of where your foot's supposed to be and how bent your knees and where your fists are supposed to be and how your foot's supposed to be on an angle, if you don't know all that, it looks perfect. But if you are someone who's deep into martial arts, deep into this specific style, then you know it's not correct. So he did not want it shared. So it was not picked for the book. Instead, the photo that you see here was actually picked for the book. And now Renchi, the guy who's in the air, is very short. I think he's like just about 5 feet tall, somewhere around there, the low fives, where Shihan is more my height. He's about 5'9" or so. And so Renchi's actually, you can tell, Renchi's way above Shihan, right? Renchi is higher. And the way that we had to accomplish this, first of all, I borrowed, I think it was at the time, a Nikon D5 or a D6. I can't remember exactly which camera. I have to double check. But it's one of those larger, high-speed Nikon bodies, and I use my 24-70 2.8 lens. But I borrowed the body, and so I was basically rapid firing, and I had strobes that I had pretty low power so that I can get faster speeds out of. And basically, I was photographing click, 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 rapid fire with the strobes to get him perfectly still. That was what we needed for the book. So, and you can imagine 20,000 photos, give or take, all like this. A lot of strobes, a lot of frames. Sometimes they came out black because the strobe wasn't fast enough for the camera, but it was what it was. And I was tethered, by the way, 100% of the time tethered to a MacBook Pro. So, this photo came out. The way we did this is instead of him running towards Shihan and then jumping up and actually kicking him, which we didn't want anybody getting hurt. This was on a hard slab. We just throw down, photo background and stuff like that. Background paper, savage paper on the floor. Instead, we had him, do sort of like a Superman jump and then get into the stance in the air. So he's not jumping and leaping towards Shihan. He's actually jumping straight up, getting into that stance in the air and then landing back on his feet safely. So it wasn't a forward momentum. It was an up, and that's it, momentum. So it looked like he's flying towards him. He's really not. And that's the magic of photography and stills and using strobes and really having someone super athletic, very flexible, and really talented at doing exactly what you see in this photo. So it was completely staged. It's not a real fight. It was for a book. If you want to see that, you can, of course, go to photobreakdown.com, click on the show notes for this episode. I will link to this photo in the show notes. And if you want, I even have a free ebook that actually has even more photographs from this series and actually some words written by the patriarch of the school. So, and again, originally I was there photographing different things as a courtesy to be nice to my father-in-law. And then eventually the patriarch of the school became my client. I did a whole bunch of brand sessions for him and things like that. I did this book for him that took like a long time. I think it was like 6 full-day sessions total. And then eventually I joined the school as a student. So he has always referred to me as the black belt of karate when he's a 10th degree. He was, again, sadly he passed, but I think he was a 10th degree or something like that, black belt. So anyway, if you want the free ebook, it's available as well. It's called When Photography and Karate Merge. It's a variety of photographs from over the years and also some of my words and some of his words together to talk about how karate and photography sort of are connected in many ways. So with that said, thank you for listening to this special episode of Photo Breakdown. Again, if you'd like to see this photo that I'm talking about, that I shared the story about, go to photobreakdown.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show. It's available on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts. Of course, it's available on Anchor, and you can always subscribe by email, also at photobreakdown.com. And of course, if you'd like to be a guest, just scroll to the bottom of photobreakdown.com, and you can learn all about how to become a guest on the show and share the story of one of your photographs. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you. Well, I guess you'll hear me and my guest in the next episode.